If you're the kind of guy or gal that's been driving a 911 for a while, you're used to driving a Porsche, or even somebody that maybe previously you had a 350Z when you were in college and you loved it, and now you're looking for that next thing that's even better, nicer, faster, the GT, GTC, GTR is a great place to look. Standing here with one of my favorite cars out of the AMG lineup, if not my favorite car out of the AMG lineup. This is the 2020 GT C. And there's a couple reasons I love the GT C. And yes, I know there's a GTR. I know there's one that has more horsepower. But the reason I love the GT C, and not many people know this, is the C actually stands for comfort. And it is the most comfortable out of the two-door GT lineup. This is the Selenite Gray Magno, as Mercedes-Benz calls it. It's a matte gray. There's a beautiful pearlescence to it. When it's in the brilliance of natural sun, you get a very nice pearlescence to the paint, a very nice shine, especially on all the curvature. And there's so many beautiful curves on the vehicle, especially on the hood, what we call the power dome, the big fenders. And like I said earlier, this being a GTC has the wide body kit on it, so your rear fenders are even bigger than that on a GT. And there's just all kind of nice curves all over the vehicle. The GT series was the second series that AMG was allowed to fully build from the ground up. There is no Mercedes non-AMG version. The SLS was their first car, their first Halo car. That was the first car that Mercedes allowed AMG to produce by itself. And over a decade later, they came out with the GT, the GTC, the GTS, the GTR, and these were the second time that Mercedes handed the reins over to AMG and let AMG build it from the ground up. And they did a phenomenal job, just like they did with the SLS. So one of the really cool things with the GTC, and one of the things that we changed through the AMG setup in the last couple of years, and you'll see it continue, is the AMG style specific grille. So with the lateral slats, which is really cool. Your star will be one of two things. This one actually has what's called Distronic, the active cruise control. So even though you have a crazy track capable vehicle, you still have a vehicle right here that turn the cruise control on 80, someone pulls in front of you going 60, the car will automatically slow you down to 60. Once they get out of your way, you'll go back up to 80. So that's the other cool thing with the GTC is, like I said earlier, you're not really missing out on all the niceties that Mercedes-Benz has to offer with other products. You still get to have the active cruise control. You still have these phenomenal LED headlights. You have a really comfortable ride quality. You have that beautiful Designo quilted interior, but you also have 550 horsepower. So it's a very nice package, and especially something that you won't feel like just has to be a weekend driver, that you just want to drive on Sunday because it beats you up too much. It's a car that you can get in and drive every day of the week and be happy driving it. So right here under the hood of the 2020 GTC is our beautiful hand-built V8. It's a twin-turbo V8, and the turbos are in the valley of the cylinders. It's what we call a hot V setup. The cool thing with having the turbos, and you can actually see them, they're right there behind that flashing, they're top-mounted, is that by having the cylinders on the outside of the turbos, it makes the exhaust exchange extremely short. And having your turbos set up like that basically gives you zero turbo lag. It's a phenomenal setup. It gives you a very compact motor, a very compact engine space. The other cool thing with the GTC is that you have a dry sump lubrication system. So we no longer have an oil pan underneath the vehicle. With the dry sump lubrication right here, we can lay that motor even lower into the engine bay, giving you a lower center of gravity. Even though the motor is in the front, we actually consider this a front mid-engine because the majority of the motor is actually over the front axles, closer to the center of the vehicle. So we consider it a front mid-engine setup. Handling is incredible. As I mentioned earlier, you do have the four-wheel steering, rear-wheel drive setup in this vehicle. Dual clutch transmission. The majority of this actually that you're seeing in here is kind of a big air intake setup. But very cool, producing 550 horsepower, 502 foot-pounds of torque, all going to the rear wheels. Several different modes. We can leave this in a comfort mode, which makes that a very manageable 550 horsepower. Or we can put it into a sport or sport plus mode, or even race mode, which lets us launch the vehicle. Launch control is super easy to set up, super easy to do, and very fun on top of that. Going to the inside, one of the things I love on the GTC is the interiors, no matter which one you choose, are all super nice. So this one has the Designo Pearl Gray or Pearl Silver interior. We have the quilted stitching. We have the embossed AMG moniker on the armrest. This one has the matte carbon fiber, so you'll see it a little bit down here. You can see it more in the center. The matte carbon fiber is super cool, a very fresh take on carbon fiber. We've been doing the regular glossy or lacquered carbon fiber. We also have the digital gauge cluster. That was new as of about a year ago. We started putting a digital gauge cluster into the GTs, and it is awesome. And the reason I really love the digital gauge cluster, even though I do like the old school analog still, is that you kind of get the best of both worlds. You can set up the digital gauge cluster to look analog, or you can set it up in a progressive state, or a progressive setup where you really have all your data displayed to you in a very clean, precise manner. And especially when you have a vehicle that can do 180 miles an hour, you want a vehicle that you can read the data in a really clear and concise way. The back is actually still big enough to use if you want to throw golf clubs or anything back there. This car has the aerodynamics package on it. So this one has a fixed mounted wing. This car also has the night package on it. So the wing is black, as are the side mirrors, as are the exhaust. So by doing that, you kind of get a nice little contrast. Back here, you'll see, I can fold this in. You have a pretty decent trunk, pretty decent boot, as some would call it. Sometimes when you go into these halo cars or hypercars, you kind of sacrifice your creature comforts, but once again, one of the reasons I like the GTC is you really don't have to sacrifice anything. If you do need to run by the grocery store on the way home, you have a place to actually put things. With the rear, we also have a differential cooler right here. So that's going to be GTC and GTR only. The GTSs will actually be a little narrower than this. The GTCs and GTRs are wider. So this GTC, once again, going back to why it's my favorite, you do get the wide body kit, you do get the all-wheel steering, which the regular GT won't have, but you do get a more, in my opinion, more comfortable ride and a lower price point too. Cost is awesome. I mean, 550 horsepower is definitely nothing to scoff at. There's no push button close, there's no soft close doors. Everything on these is manual. It is a true sports car. So when we close the trunk, we pull the thing down and close it. Just because those are all weight saving choices that we decided to make just to keep the weight on the vehicle even less. So the more horsepower and less weight, the faster we can go. That's kind of the idea behind that. But just a phenomenal vehicle and a phenomenal daily driver. I have a handful of guys that drive these on the daily, and I can tell you it'll make your commute a lot shorter.